Hello, hi. Hello, hello, hi. Not too sure how many people are going to join this one, but hey, we'll see. All right, I got one person in the chat. In the meantime, I shall post this. Oh, don't want that. Bish, bash, bosh. JD, what's happening, my man? Not doing too much over here. Just a bit bored. Saturday evening, no plans. So I figured I'd do a live stream. So why the hell not? And obviously, we got a bit of news this weekend, so we can talk about that. Just bear with me a second. I'm going to post the link. See if some other people want to join. All right, I'm back. Okay, so we've got Andrew in the house as well. How you doing, buddy? Hope you're having a good Saturday. Yeah, JD, weekends, nothing planned, up to no good. Got Edmund Ironside. He says hi, Outmatch. Hello, Edmund. I don't recognize your name. Are you new to the channel? How you doing, my friend? Anyway, yeah. So listen, the floor is open, guys. Let's just entertain ourselves for a little bit, I guess. I don't know what you guys make of the latest. Obviously, the fight's off next weekend, but I guess there is still some interest because I guess potentially Anthony Joshua could get a new opponent, which I'm sure is kind of going to be the hot topic of this live stream and kind of the talk of the town for probably the weekend. JD says, I think the main question is, will and who does AJ fight next Saturday? Definite Argovich. Well, yeah, that's going to be the $1 million question. I think that there are a lot of people, from what I've seen, who are kind of the first thing they're doing is going and asking the question, who is AJ going to fight? But I said in my reaction video to the news earlier that I wasn't sure if there would be a backup opponent because, for example, like a few years ago when Joshua was unified champion, it was usually like a mandatory he was going to be fighting, and therefore there was going to be a fighter who would kind of be waiting just in case, just in case the call came through. Um, Famous example being when uh, um, pulled out. When Pulev pulled out, old joke from 2017. When he pulled out, obviously Takam was ready and waiting, um, and that was obviously a different circumstance though, just because that event was massive. That was at the Principality Stadium, 70,000 people. The show had to go on. Whereas with this, yeah, it's a somewhat big show. I guess Joshua is still a draw, he's still an attraction, but it was a rehab fight for two fighters who are contenders looking to get some kind of momentum and form back. Are they really going to have a dedicated backup fighter for this fight? I'm not sure. Personally, I doubt it. And part of that is because I feel like they would have probably announced it beforehand, like is usually the case or sometimes the case. Although there is still the possibility, because if you look at the undercard, which isn't great, there are some fighters who could potentially step in. Um, there is Gerald Washington, there is Derek Chisora, there is Dempsey McKean, and there's Filip Hrgovic. Um, really goes without saying, the one we all want is Hrgovic, because in reality, that's an even better fight than the Whyte fight. Is it realistic? No, let's be real, it's not. Although I wouldn't say that it's entirely beyond the realms of possibility. And if anything, I'm going to try and work some magic here, and I'm going to say maybe, just maybe, if we drum up enough publicity and enough demand, surely they could make that Hrgovic fight. Now, don't get me wrong, Hrgovic is, I guess you could say, on the cusp. He's within touching distance of an IBF world title shot. Joshua has that kind of Deontay Wilder carrot being dangled in front of him. They probably won't want to jeopardize their respective next moves. However, I see it as being somewhat like a shred of realism, because if you look, Hrgovic is fighting Dempsey McKean. I don't know, but surely Dempsey McKean isn't getting paid that much. So could they say, look, Philip, okay, why don't you take on um, White's contract, whatever that may be? I imagine with White, he is, I guess he represents himself to a large degree. Like, he works with Eddie Hearn on a case by case, fight by fight basis. What if they said, look, Philip, this is what we were going to give White. Interested? And then obviously AJ, I know this is wild, but I'm trying to will it into existence more than anything. What if they say to AJ, or what if AJ says, you know what, this guy's dangerous, but he might be better prep for Wilder in December than White would ever be. So, look, sorry, my phone's just going off. Let me just silent that. But Philip potentially gets the deal that White was going to get. Joshua, a bit more of a dangerous fight, but he gets better prep for a potential Deontay Wilder fight in December. And yeah, Dempsey McKean is left without an opponent, but he's not really asking for that much money, I imagine. I don't know. Look, as I say, this isn't necessarily coherent, doesn't necessarily make sense, but I'm trying to create a situation where this happens, because imagine this, okay? Imagine we wake up tomorrow morning, okay, Sunday morning, fight is the proposed date 6 days away, and we get Joshua versus Hrgovic. All of a sudden, pay-per-view, not so bad. Yeah, look, it's a stretch, but I'm trying here. That being said, if we want to talk realistically, I'm not even sure if the Derek Chisora rematch. What am I talking about? I'm not even sure if the Derek Chisora Anthony Joshua fight is all that realistic, purely because Joshua and um, uh, Derek Chisora are kind of like pally. Obviously, they're both from Finchley ABC, so I don't see that happening. That fight hasn't happened all this time for a reason. It's because they never seemed all that keen on fighting each other, because they're mates. Um, Gerald Washington, possibly. A lot of us were saying Gerald Washington is really the kind of opponent Joshua should have been fighting back in April instead of Franklin. So maybe it's just a right fight, wrong time. Who knows? Um, and then Dempsey McKean himself. But Joshua, does he really want to fight another southpaw? I going off from memory, but Dempsey McKean is a southpaw, right? So there are options. There are options. However, they've got to get a move on, because 6 days, it's not very much time. Well, 6.5 days, basically. But yeah, let's prepare for the worst, but hope for the best. That's what I'm trying to say. 286 Project says, interesting day in the world of boxing today. Hey, yeah, boxing, no sport like it. Ebbs and flows. It was only last week we were praising, heaping praise on Errol Spence and well, Terence Crawford and Errol Spence for like a great event, and obviously a very meaningful and comprehensive result. And now we have this, but it's wild, a roller coaster of a sport. Edmund says, "Yeah, been subbed a few months. Found you from G-Man. Never caught a live before." Okay, well, first and foremost, thanks for subbing to the channel. I hope I entertain, and I'm glad you're able to catch a live, because these are usually quite fun. We just kind of sit back and talk and chat. And speaking of G-Man, I think he's here. Uh, yeah, we got G-Man. We got G-Man in the house. What do you make of this, G? I saw your video. Obviously, first to always catch the news. Um, it's a strange one, isn't it? Let's work through these comments. Andrew says Dylan needs to retire. He's a waste man. Uh, Harsh words, Andrew, but maybe he does. Edmund says, I'm extremely disappointed in Hatman. He didn't mention you in his White video. You did mention it first that White failed. Yeah, good joke. I haven't watched Hatman's video yet, actually, but I'll probably check it out after this. Still laugh at that Beats guy wanting Hatman to shout him out. Yeah, that I used to watch Beats, and look, I'm not interested in throwing shade, as the kids say, nothing like that. Like, this is my channel, this is my space. I interact with you guys. That's all I'm really interested in. And obviously, Boxing Brotherhood, Hatman, Chris, G-Man, Henry, those are my brothers. They're my good friends. So I focus on the positivity, growing my channel, interacting with them, having a good time with them. I stay away from the drama, but I did catch that Beats' video, and it's like, come on, like, seriously. I really have to scratch my head sometimes when there are people who think that their idea has been stolen, when it's something that's not really an idea. It's a matter of fact. It's like, it's so silly. But I think, hey, look, Beats knows what he was doing, and even then, that's not a guarantee. But it was so childish. It's so trivial and silly, and kind of just wasting our breath talking about it, because I think it's just a kind of desperate ploy to get a little bit of traction. Because ultimately, regardless of what your channel's about, be it boxing or Minecraft or whatever, a lot of the time controversy sells and drama gets you views. So that's all that was. JD says, I'm not going to jump to conclusions that White purposely took. You know what? Could be. Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm trying to say. Like, in my video, I specifically stated a lot of people are going to jump to conclusions because of what's happened in the past. And that's their prerogative. Like, if you come to that conclusion before there's any solid evidence, I can't really hold it against you, because like, prior form counts for something. However, if you want to take it on a case by case basis, you do have to kind of wait for the information to come out and things to unfold before you can really nail your colors to the mast and say, okay, let's get down to brass tacks. So right now, I'm still sitting in the middle. I know I'm taking the diplomatic stance, but these things do happen in professional sport. You can eat a few too many eggs, wink, wink, and all of a sudden you're going through like an 10-month long controversy. Obviously, I'm being facetious here, but that is the reality of it. And one thing that popped into my head when this news first broke, and okay, adverse analytical findings, is I'm pretty sure Dillian Whyte's girlfriend is like a professional bodybuilder, which kind of sus, but stuff could happen that way. I don't know. Maybe he's doing some horizontal cardio or something. Uh, some in some nocturnal horizontal cardio, and look, I don't know, but things happen. I know it sounds crazy, but this is precisely why you have to kind of hear things out. But once again, if you guys want to chuck Dylan under the bus because he's been here before, he's been in this situation before, I'm not going to hold it against you. Andrew says that beats. Uh, all right. I can't say, Andrew, because other than that Hatman diss track he made, I don't watch his videos anymore. Haven't for quite a few years. Raymond says no smoke without fire. Hey, maybe you're right. Maybe you're right. I'm not going to hold it against anyone who's pointing the finger. Mr. Bipolar says Otto Wallin. Well, yeah, he's been gunning for the AJ fight for a long time. Otto Wallin, I don't know what to make of that guy. Decent fighter, but I think he's been riding the crest of that Tyson Fury fight for too long. Like, yeah, fair play. The Fury fight could have been stopped because Otto Wallin landed a legitimate left hand on Fury, busted his eye open. But let's be real, that was it. He made it like a slightly rough fight for Fury, but hasn't really done much else. But hey, if he wants to step up to the plate and that fight gets made, it probably is a better fight than Dillian Whyte. Probably not as entertaining, or probably won't be as dramatic, but in terms of quality, you could make the argument. 286 says Joshua needs to fight soon, otherwise the gap between his fight with Franklin and the potential fight with Wilder will be too long. Yeah, exactly. Like I like the idea of Joshua fighting 3 times a year, but it could have been a bit smoother than this, and maybe that's his fault, maybe it's not, but at least, you know, between the gap between April this year and December this year is obviously not as bad as the gap between August last year and December this year. So could be worse, could be better, but definitely if AJ's not a champion, this is like the prime time to be fighting regularly, because that's what he needs more than anything. He needs to get his confidence back. He needs to have more fights where he can consolidate his relationship with Derek James, continue learning, and all the other good stuff that comes with it. But they still seem like they're trying to maximize profits of AJ, which from a business perspective, I get. But are you trying to get some quick money with AJ now, or are you trying to get him back to top form so he could potentially become a champion again, or an even better fighter than he was before? G-Man says, oh, I'd love AJ versus Hrgovic, but I'd be very surprised if they did. Yeah. All we can do is hope and maybe drum up enough fuss that the overlords of boxing and Matchroom can't ignore us. We demand the Joshua versus Hrgovic fight. Andrew says, will Eddie work with Dillian again? It depends. And it depends, on my opinion, purely on whether Dillian can bring in a good crowd and sell pay-per-views. Because ultimately, that's what Eddie Hearn cares about. If he tries to say otherwise, he's lying. G-Man says, remember, no rematch for Dillian Whyte side. Imagine they'd have to add that. Also, Joshua gets the final say on everything, so it's not up to him. Oh, it's up to him, not Hearn. Yeah, I suppose money talks and BS walks. So Joshua is the one bringing the money. Against Dillian Whyte, he was the one bringing the money. And even more so against someone like Hrgovic. Swear this test was voluntary. At least make sure that you're clean. Well, that's the thing. You know, you kind of think, surely not. But strange things happen. All I'm going to say is I'm holding fire for now, just in case, just like I did in all fairness with the Conor Benn case. So, you know, just trying to be consistent. That being said, obviously months after that Conor Benn case is, I don't even want to say concluded, because me personally, I'm not satisfied with where we are with that Conor Benn case. And I may be wrong, but in my estimation, it stinks. Conor Benn, nah, stinks. Could be wrong, as I say, but I just don't get a good vibe from it. I don't think it's anywhere near enough transparency. Um, and the conduct of Eddie Hearn and Conor Benn's really been disgraceful. Really has been. Philip says the last time AJ took a late notice fight after his opponent failed a test, that transpired to be a poor decision for AJ. AJ's long term future. Is it worth having a replacement fill in? Yes, I think it is worth it because I'm sure if they haven't learned their lesson, then Team AJ are monumental idiots. Also, that being said, AJ was in a different position then. He was on top of the world, really, because that really was kind of peak AJ in terms of his confidence, I imagine, or maybe not peak in terms of confidence, but not so far from it. I think that was potentially peak AJ in terms of his ability, but also his profile, his market value. And I feel like there was maybe a little bit of hubris there where they're like, okay, Andy Ruiz, good fighter, lost once. We'll go in there, we'll do a job. But it obviously went belly up in a big way. I think there are going to be a fair bit or considerably more careful these days. You know, Filip Hrgović, is he just as dangerous as Andy Ruiz? I'm trying to look at it stylistically. Many people will say he is, maybe even more dangerous. Coming from my perspective, I've never been that impressed by Filip Hrgović. I've just got to hold my hands up. Like, I'm not someone who takes sides. I'm not interested in fanboy stuff. I just kind of say it how I see it. And Filip Hrgović, for my money, I'd be surprised if he became a champion. In all honesty, I think he's a good, serviceable contender, a high-level contender, but I'm just not sure if he's like the bee's knees like everyone makes out. I've never been impressed by him. That being said, could he beat AJ? Yeah, probably. Especially now, AJ's like a little bit down and out, seems to be doubting himself. But stylistically, I guess it's hard to say because AJ's not necessarily the same fighter now than he was in 2019. But I don't know, maybe AJ's a bit more cavalier now. And he's like, you know what? Screw it. Let's go. I've already lost 3 times. You know, let's bring it on. But then, of course, there's the whole Wilder fight. But is anybody really picking AJ to beat Wilder if they fight in December? I'm not. So, I don't know. I guess it'll show a lot. Whoever AJ ends up fighting next Saturday, if he ends up fighting anyone, it'll be a good indication of where AJ is right now and what his intentions are. Because if he fights Hrgović next Saturday, you got to put some serious respect on AJ's name, because that's a power move, you know. But will that happen? Probably not. Mr. Bipolar says, "What about Andy Ruiz again? A trilogy?" Well, you know, a lot of people they're kind of pulling names out. Like there are a fair few guys who have kind of thrown their hat into the ring, saying, "Oh yeah, I'll fight AJ." But if it's anyone abroad, like in the States, I think you can forget that, because are they really gonna get adjusted to the UK time in 6.5 days? I doubt it. So it's going to have to be someone who's already in the UK, probably fighting on the card, or they're from a country that doesn't have so much of a time difference to the UK. So that really narrows the list down quite a bit. Washington, America's big hope. They won't put him in with AJ. Washington, America's big hope. Mr. Bipolar, which dimension are you in where Washington is America's big hope? JD says, I never knew McKean as a southpaw. Am I wrong? I'm pretty sure he's a southpaw. Let me just double check that. I'm pretty sure he is. Old Big Ears McKean. Looks like the World Cup. Let me just double check that. I'm pretty sure he is. Dempsey McKean. Yeah, it's southpaw. Because I think he was maybe being spoken about has been an opponent for AJ instead of Franklin back in April or late last year. So yeah, Dempsey McKean, he's all right. He's capable, but yeah, what would I say? C-level heavyweight maybe. Hasn't really got the best body of work. Although he did stop Johnny Rice in 10 rounds. But I haven't seen that fight, so I don't know how he looks. And Johnny Rice, journeyman maybe, gatekeeper, but he's decent. He beat Michael Coffey twice. But then Michael Coffey, no great shakes himself. G-Man says, mate, I'm always prepared for... Yeah, nobody beats G-Man. I think with the Conor Benn video, I think I beat you, G-Man. And I was like, boy, I must have been on it because nobody's quicker than G-Man. It's a strange one. Whyte has hinted the substance is known, yet we haven't been made aware. I do think Whyte is a B-side now, means he'll get banned. Yeah, maybe. Because obviously the Rivas fiasco back in 2019, he was the name. Whereas with this, we have to see how it unfolds. But I don't know. Just have to see what happens. But a lot of people are just calling for Whyte to be banned straight away, which I think is a little bit unfair. The rationale that people are giving, they're saying, okay, this is Whyte's third strike, 3 strikes, you're out, no more excuses. But I cast my mind back to when, or around the time Whyte came back after his first ban, which was 2012. And I personally thought that was really unfortunate for Whyte because what he failed the test for was an over-the-counter supplement, which I think about 2 weeks prior was put onto a banned substances list. So you can see the turnaround there is like really, really harsh, and you got caught out. And you say, oh yeah, but this is why you stay up to date and you have nutritionists and people around you who check these things. 100%, yeah. But when you're Dillian Whyte and you're fighting at what, English level, are you really going to have the resources to do that? And yeah, maybe you just have to consult the list yourself. But when you're a young fighter, you're an inexperienced guy. Dillian Whyte isn't the most educated guy. He's come from a real kind of tough and rough and ready background and fought his way to where he is. So I felt personally that was a very tough situation for him. It was very unfortunate, very unlucky. But I understand people kind of disregard that and they say, look, you know what? No smoke without fire. And therefore, you've got to pay the price. Because I will concede that the whole Rivas situation, I can't remember it vividly, like from the top of my head, but I wasn't entirely satisfied with how that was resolved. I just felt like it wasn't as conclusive. Just my opinion, though. JD says, what's this guy's beats? Well, if you ask me that and I tell you I'm giving him airtime, really, I'm promoting his channel. But boxing beats and rhymes. There you have it. And look, like beats sometimes, at least when I used to watch him, he made some good content. I really liked his what was it? How great was such and such a fighter? I think he did like legacy reviews on like Floyd Mayweather and a bunch of other fighters, and they were like round tables, and they're good stuff. But I don't watch his channel anymore, and I don't know. I can't say if you're missing out on anything if you don't follow him. Edmund says, I agree. I thought it was funny. I would be worried if I was him. He's been at it since before Hatman and G-Man. Is not far off passing him. G-Man's only been here, 3 years? Yeah. Hey, man. We're all on our own journey. So just stay in your lane. That's what I'd say. Even saying the D word. Yeah, exactly. I just say tests. Just say tests. Because what I've noticed as well is these live streams, like this is a good live stream. I think this is a record having 40 viewers. So thank you guys for joining. But these live streams, even though they're easy for me to interact with you guys, I actually lose money. Like I don't get anywhere near as much money um, on the live streams as I do for other videos. So I hope you guys appreciate that. Like me spending 2 hour or hour and a half with you guys, I'm actually losing money. No, I'm not losing money. I'm just not getting as much as I could because the kind of the processing of live streams in my studio is very strange. Like on my YouTube, on my front page, my home page, it will say this live stream got 200 and something views, but then on the actual analytics, it will say 10 views, and therefore I don't get uh, the revenue from that. So hope you guys appreciate this. I'm joking. It's all good. It's fun. We've got a busy one today, so it's good. RSV says, was any ranking belt on the line for Joshua White too? Not that I'm aware of. I think it was completely beltless this fight. Edmund says, I do enjoy videos, mate, as well as Boxing Brotherhood guys. Like them all. I just like hearing different opinion from guys who are objective. Or you'll say the same things, but that's okay. Yeah, look, it really depends. I know G-Man told me there was one guy in the comments of one of our videos, and he said, G-Man, Chris Andre, and Outmatch are all just an echo chamber for Hatman. And I looked at him and I was like, is this guy all right? Does he actually watch our videos? Because, yeah, when you're objective, you're going to have a lot of overlap. I mean, you're going to have a lot of overlap anyway. I feel like Hatman, myself, G-Man, Chris, and Henry, we're all on a very similar wavelength. You probably noticed that none of us are very excitable. Like there are some guys on YouTube who, when there's news, they're effing and blinding and cussing and pointing the finger, and it's just a whole song and dance. Whereas all of us, we're all pretty low key, chilled out guys. So we're similar in that regard, and therefore we come to similar conclusions sometimes. But even then, there's plenty of disagreement. Now it's always respectful disagreement, and we always like, oh yeah, I see your point of view, blah 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 blah. But like even something minor, like when I did my review of Crawford Spence the other weekend, and now as I say, this is kind of trivial, but my assessment of it, watching the fight live, I thought Crawford actually looked a bit more anxious than Spence on the ring walk. But then when they got into the ring, I felt it was reversed. Whereas Hatman felt the opposite. He felt that Spence looked more anxious on the ring walk. And so that just goes to show that even myself and Hatman, who a lot of the time have similar takes on a fight or whatever, we can still disagree. So make of that what you will. And also we kind of talk about different things. Like when I give a breakdown, I have a tendency to focus on the minutia. And some people would say I'd probably miss the forest for the trees, whereas someone like Hatman, someone like G-Man have like really good comprehensive breakdowns and predictions where they factor in like every possible factor you could consider, and they pay it lip service with me. I have a certain bias towards particular aspects of a fight, be it technique, tactics, bit of psychology, all that kind of stuff. So I feel like you can find something unique with all of our channels. Um, yeah, so there were no belts for AJ versus White. Jay Jr. says, big up Outmatch. Hey, big up to you, my friends. Maybe AJ will just wait for the Wilder fight and Saudi paid it. Well, as I say, AJ's next move is really going to show his intention. If he just sits back and waits for the AJ fight, I think the Wilder fight, it shows that he probably is just going in there for the money. Like one last roll of the dice. However, if he was to fight someone next Saturday and someone who's half decent and maybe even the same or similar dimensions to Wilder, I think it shows that he's taking it seriously and he's in it to win it. So watch this space, I guess. G-Man says, Wallins an okay fighter, but he's done nothing since Fury. And I think it's like, okay, you did well, but now push on. Yeah, exactly. And he hasn't, the White pullout wasn't his fault. and that could have been competitive. Yeah, yeah, definitely. It's not to put all the blame on Wallen, but he runs his mouth a hell of a lot for someone who hasn't done anything or done not much. Um, okay. JD says it's a shame FA Jagber is scheduled to fight Kosabutski this month. That would have been a good confidence booster fight. That would have prepared him for Wilder as he's a tall guy. Yeah, there are definitely guys out there who could be a decent stylistic preparation for uh, AJ should he go into this Wilder fight. But it's how realistic is it? Um, yeah, a lot of people say that Jagber's dangerous. Yeah, he's got a big punch, but he's stiff as a board. You can go back all the way to nearly 2 years ago, actually, when I think it was Henry, G-Man, myself, and Hatman. We had like a little roundtable discussion for the Fury Wilder trilogy fight, and I think all of us quite confidently said that Frank Sanchez would beat F.A. Jagba, another guy who I've just never been impressed by. Yeah, he gets some good highlight reels, but that's about it. RSV, are you talking about today or way back in the day when Dillian Whyte got banned? Because when he got banned back in the day, like 2012, that was for an over-the-counter supplement called Jacked. Is stylized Jack 3D. But I think just like G-Man, I've actually heard I know people, I've spoken to people who have used that before. And the one description of Jacked, which I heard that made me laugh, was one of the guys who was in Hatman's Facebook group and is also in the Element. Spoken to him for years. He described it as rocket fuel. That was amusing, but it just goes to show how potent this stuff was or is, because I think you still get it. Although I don't think it's uh, as potent as it once was. G-Man says, I look forward to my old pal Tony Bellew. What will he say about this becoming Tony Bellew? If ever someone should keep their mouth shut, it's him. But he just can't help himself. G-Man says 2017, 2018 was peak age of confidence and fan base. Yeah, definitely. Definitely. Like he's absolutely skyrocketed around the Klitschko fight. Because I remember as well, I think obviously 2017 was like 6 years ago. So a lot of people have only just started getting onto the boxing bandwagon in that 6 years. So they don't really understand what that fight in particular, that Klitschko fight for AJ, that just took him to another stratosphere. There were documentaries of that fight on BBC. If you're in the UK, obviously BBC is mainstream television. In the States, what would the equivalent of BBC be in the States? But BBC is TV that is a television channel that everyone has access to. That's how mainstream AJ was back then. Selling out what 80,000 in or 90,000 in Wembley. Boy, and when that fight came around in late April, that was like a public holiday. Everybody and their mum was talking about it because everybody and their mum knew who AJ was. And back then Tyson Fury was like niche. Like, yeah, some of the casuals were starting to catch on, like, oh, this Fury guy, talking loads of rubbish. Oh, look at this video of him punching himself in the face. He can't hold a candle to AJ. And this goes to show how times have changed. RSV, what's the point in UK if they can't afford legal cases? I don't know any. I got to come clean. I don't focus on anti-doping at all. I don't know. Like a lot of people kind of focus on performance enhancing drugs in sport. I really don't have time for it. And I know I'm obviously doing videos talking about White um, and doing a live stream right now, but I'm not one of these guys who goes into the analysis of drug testing agencies and performance enhancers. It's like, it's just not me, so I can't tell you. JD says also saw people on Insta demanding AJ Ruiz 3. That would do good numbers, of course, but AJ would not look good in that fight, obviously. Yeah, that's I'm not even sure I want to see that, just because it was so disappointing to see how Ruiz turned up for the second fight. And would he even be motivated for this fight because there's no belts on the line? Whereas when he beat AJ the first time, he actually had a life-changing opportunity in front of him. Excuse me, guys. I'm just going to read. Okay, I'm back in the room. DJ Charlie Boy says, "Can't believe, uh, can't believe it. The two fights I booked tickets for, Conor Ben and this, and both have been cancelled. You can't write it." Well, Charlie Boy, the event hasn't been cancelled as of now, and based on from what I've heard, um, it's actually they're actually kind of searching for an opponent behind the scenes for AJ. So it might be worth holding on to your ticket. That's all I'm going to say. But yeah, that is unfortunate. Like two fights in very similar circumstances, just being shrouded with controversy. It's always a gamble when it comes to boxing. It's bad enough buying the pay-per-views because you don't know how a fight's going to go. Um, but yeah, even more so when you get tickets. Mr. Bipolar says Hergovich got close call against Zhang. I don't rate him as a champion. Yeah, you know what? I've been more impressed with Zhang. I've got to be honest. I find Zhang not only more entertaining but more impressive than Hergovich. Oh right, okay. G-Man says I only beat him on Ben because the Wi-Fi I had at the time. Okay, yeah. To be honest, that does make sense because I haven't been able to come before you since. Well, okay. Thanks. You just officially shattered my confidence. That's it. That's it. We're closing the channel down. There's no point. I'm never going to be able to get the news out before G-Man. Strict liability should be banned regardless. Well, Andrew, that's a good point because at this level, there should be greater liability. And in a lot of the cases, I did. So for those of you who don't know, I actually have a degree in sports science for what it's worth. And I did a nutrition module, which was nutrition for, sporting health and whatnot. And that is a fact. Like it is strict liability, regardless. Like you can't say, "Oh yeah, I didn't know, I didn't know." So it's a very good point, Andrew. And that's academic, if you will. Anderson, sorry. Oh, right. Okay, that makes sense. I was thinking, is this guy all right? Washington, American Hope. Um, yeah, okay, it makes sense now. um, Andrew says, "Love the Ronnie Coleman." Yeah. Look, I'm just gonna say disclaimer. I'm not trying to fire shots at Dillian Whyte. I'm not trying to make any assumptions. However, that's one thing I've noticed. Whenever a fighter has any kind of controversy with like performance enhancers and tests and stuff, like they fail a test or there's some kind of um, adverse finding in this case, everyone always uses the thumbnail of like really distorted muscles on the fight. Oh, see, like this shows that he was on the PEDs, but it's a little bit of a sneak diss. And look, Ronnie Coleman always catches everybody's eye with the "yeah, buddy." So yeah, I was having fun with that one. I try not to make my thumbnails too serious these days. Just try and relax and make people laugh. Have a bit of banter. And Andrew, 10 whole pounds. That that honestly means a lot. Thank you so much for that. Um, big up every time. Andrew's been following the channel for a long time as well, so that I really appreciate it, brother. Thank you. Have I ever thought about or consider YouTube influencer boxing? Do you mean covering it? Um, yeah, I don't see why not. It's just there is like I don't have an issue with influencer boxing because I know a lot of people do, and I can kind of understand where they come from. However, the way I see it is, yeah, you have these influencers who come to boxing, and I don't know, some people say, oh, they treat boxing with disrespect and they make a mockery out of it, but it brings eyes into boxing. And whether people like it or not, it's actually going to get people into boxing. Like I coach young kids, like just community boxing sessions, nothing special. At least like that's what I do on a regular basis. And you know, the truth is, it's a matter of fact. I get kids come up to me, young kids, 11, 12, 13, 14, and they come up and say, they ask, "Oh, coach, who's your favorite boxer?" And I'll tell them, and they don't know who I'm talking about. I say James Toney or Roberto Duran or whoever. They won't know. But then they say, "Oh, I don't know him, but my favorite fighter is KSI or Jake Paul." It happens. So if these guys are inspiring kids to take up boxing, it keeps the conveyor belt of talent coming through in a roundabout way. Although what I will say is there is a kind of atmosphere. There's like a tackiness, um, or like a bit of a classlessness, a lack of class when it comes to influencer boxing, I find. And I'm just not that keen on it. Like these YouTuber personalities, like these misfits lot, like KSI, for example, is like the quintessential influencer boxer. I used to like KSI back in 2012 when I was a teenager and I really should have been doing my homework, but instead I was messing around on YouTube watching silly videos. But they're like a culture of man children who are very successful, so credit to them. They've made more money in a week than I have in my entire working life so far. So like respect to them, but it's just like an atmosphere and a bit of a gig that I'm not feeling too much. However, I just make videos on stuff I'm interested in. So if there ever came an influencer fight or whatever that I was interested in, I'd do it. But I'm not going to say, oh, for sure, I'm definitely going to get around to doing it. But I hope that answers your question, nevertheless. And thanks again for the 10 quid. I shall spend it wisely. And G Man, with the €2 49, love a bit of foreign currency there. So thank you as always, brother. Okay. Penzol says Hatman made a live stream channel for nothing really. I'm not sure if it's for nothing. I think Hatman's just busy. He doesn't have a lot of time to do live streams because they take up a while. But hey, you got to maximize your revenue, haven't you? G-Man says, I always laugh when someone says, oh, you're copying Hatman. I uploaded my video before him. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. It's like, firstly, this is not an idea. It's news. Like, I'm presenting the news to you. How can I be copying someone? And oh yeah, real kicker. My video was up first. Like, I don't think people get it. We're like five guys who make videos about the same topics. They're bound to be similar. And like, oh yeah, you don't have to watch us all. Appreciate it if you do, but it's your time. Henry says, honestly, Spence looked pretty waved in the pre-fight interview. You know what? I think Spence has that demeanor where he's naturally quite spaced. Down to the way he talks, his eyelids are always very droopy. But after the fight, didn't sound good at all. And understandably, he just had like 7 bells knocked out of him, which is, it's not going to make you speak any clearer or be any more cognizant. So, yeah, I don't. There's some people trying to use that as an excuse. Like, oh, yeah, Spence must have been blazing in the dressing room, maybe trying to calm himself down, or oh, he went up this really steep hill the week before the fight. nah, he was just in with a guy who was so much better than him. Like, boxing fans never learn. Yeah, there are reasons as to why performances go one way or decisions go one way or the other, but sometimes it is just as simple as the major factor was that he wasn't as good and the other guy was as good and he did the business. Let's move on now. Um, Thunder making very strange accusations there. I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole because it's rather disgusting. JD says, I think AJ wants another fight before Wilder. I just know. Yeah, he probably does deep down. I really wonder what AJ, his kind of thought process is going into a potential Wilder fight, because that's quite daunting. Wilder hasn't really had the best rehabilitation himself on paper. Like, oh yeah, Wilder fought Helenius, knocked him out in one round. However, it's how Wilder perceives that, because Deontay Wilder is very headstrong, and he probably feels just as confident now than he did before the Fury fights, because he had that big win, quote unquote, against Helenius, which is just almost completely repaired his confidence. Maybe that's the kind of gist I get. Whereas AJ, he's a bit more of a thinker, a bit more of an overthinker, and that kind of, with that overthinking probably comes doubt. Kivia, I think I always mispronounce your name. Sorry, but you say, I actually thought G-Man was clickbaiting when I saw his video pop up. He never does that. So I looked up and I can't believe it. DAZN, yeah, DAZN have really taken a hammering recently. And on the flip side, PBC are raking it in. But PBC, as much as I criticize them, and as much as the criticism that they do deserve, because they're not always working in the best interests of fighters or fans, it goes to show, if you make the fights that the fans want to see, you're going to get the money you're after. That goes to the promoters and it goes to the fighters. I know in retrospect they didn't really seem much like big risks for the respective winners, but Garcia versus Tank at the time was seen as a somewhat risky fight, and it paid off, from a financial perspective. Same thing as Errol Spence versus Bud Crawford. So it is in the best interest to make these fights happen. And PBC they're enjoying that now, because they've just had two money spinners. And ultimately it comes down to voting with your pocket, Andrew says, Sporting Icons is frantically running interference for his BF. You guys are absolutely wild. You're always trying to bring this drama over to my live streams. I'm just here in my little corner, nice and peaceful, not even 2K subs, putting out my videos. You guys are always trying to inject this controversy. Outmatch. Sporting Icons doing this. Boxing Beats and Rhymes doing this, blah, 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 blah. I actually saw Sporting Icons' video, and I don't follow Sporting Icons, so I don't know what he's like. But you guys, you're going to have to tell me what's going on. I didn't hear anything too untoward in his video. Get Ortiz in there with AJ and let AJ punch up an old man. I would say that would be quite satisfying. You know why? Just because, and this sounds really harsh and brutal, but for so long, we had to listen to the Fury fanboys and the Deontay Wilder fanboys make out as if Ortiz was like the unsung hero of the heavyweight division, when this guy had done nothing. His best win at the time was Bryant Jennings in late 2015. Bryant Jennings, good, capable fighter, but they were carrying on as if Ortiz was just like, it was just a matter of time until he became champion. No. And for that reason, I actually would like to see AJ just punch up Ortiz, but if that fight got made, I wouldn't complain because there is still the possibility that Ortiz starches AJ. I wouldn't put money on it, but yeah, once again, realistically, isn't Ortiz based in Florida? And I doubt he's going on a convenient tour around the British Isles where he can just, oh yeah, just stop off in London, have my boxing boots. Sure, I'll step in. Um, yeah, Florida's a big time difference. And 6 days, not very long at all. Andrew says, you'll never see me again. Yeah, never see me again, Cougs. Oh, yeah, I can actually do a decent Scouse accent, but I haven't practiced that quote. So, yeah, Tony Bellew. My boxing coach years ago, he was actually a Scouser. Because everybody in London, oh, we hate Scouse accents. This is the worst accent ever. I grew up listening to that accent, from my boxing coach. So I don't see what the fuss is about. Dr. Rep says, I don't hate the Wallin or Washington fight. Ultimately, Joshua doesn't need a challenge. He needs a dominant KO. That reminds him he's capable of stopping people. He's technically capable already. Yeah. In a roundabout way, that is it. He needs to get his confidence back. Should he want to become the best version of himself? So I definitely get what you mean. But then it's, I guess it's somewhat a trade-off. Do you go for the better preparation? Actually, no, I can't even say it like that. Yeah, I get what you mean. I was gonna make like a rebuttal, but I don't think it really works. Andrew says they were saying AJ would surpass Lennox. Yeah, AJ hype back then was massive. Just, as I say, it just shows how times have changed. You're only as good as your last fight. And boxing fans are fickle. CNN. Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, the US equivalent of BBC. Thunder Road, has Chisora ever popped dirty? I'm finding newfound respect. No, I don't. Maybe G-Man. I know you're a bit of a boxing encyclopedia. I don't remember Chisora ever having any PED controversies. None that come to mind. Chisora tends to be controversial in other ways. The last thing he needs is any kind of PED controversy. Philip asks if I've heard of a YouTuber called Fight Club 24/7. I've seen his channel, dotted around when he's uploaded community posts, but never watched a video. But yeah, I have heard of him. As talented as the heavyweight division is, it would be nice if the top guys fought each other more. Not just talking about Fury, Joshua, Wilder, and Usyk, but the boxers below them in the rankings. Yeah, I get what you mean. There is a problem in boxing, but particularly the heavyweight division with immediate rematches and things getting locked up that way. But I will say that recently there has been that talk of, oh, nobody's fighting each other at heavyweight. The fights we want aren't getting made. That's nonsense. And that really is people coping for Tyson Fury, because Tyson Fury he's the only one fighting the fights he's not supposed to. If you look at this fight that we're supposed to have next weekend, Joshua fighting Whyte, perfectly acceptable. Two guys who've just come off the back of fighting the same opponent. Both need rehab fights, and they're contenders. They have no title obligations or anything. Perfectly acceptable fight. Alexander Usyk fighting Daniel Dubois. That's a formality, mandatory. Joe Joyce having a rematch with Zhilei Zhang. I guess you could say that's a necessary fight. Filip Hrgović, Dempsey McKean. Once again, probably not the best fight on paper, but a fight that is probably supposed to happen right now, because obviously Filip Hrgović good position with the IBF, kind of waiting to see how the Usyk Dubois situation unfolds. Who else? Excuse me, Deontay Wilder could be doing better. He could be fighting Andy Ruiz, but he's not for whatever reason. I will say that is mildly annoying, but there is also the potential that he fights Joshua, and Wilder himself is a contender. So when you think about it, these fights are happening. Could there be better fights? Yeah, definitely. But it's not like the entire division is inactive and everyone's avoiding each other. That's not really the case. Fury's just avoiding Usyk, plain and simple. And he's avoiding Usyk to fight Francis Ngannou, which is shameless. G-Man says, I remember going to a job interview in 2017, 2 girls in their late 30s and early 40s. Do you have hobbies? This is pre-G-Man days. I was like, I like boxing. Oh, we love Anthony Joshua. Yeah, exactly. Those were the days. Excuse me. Those were the days when if you weren't singing Anthony Joshua's praises, how can you be a boxing fan? You're an AJ hater. Unheard of. Unbelievable. I remember back in 2015 when Joshua, in the lead up to the first Joshua Whyte fight, I actually sat on the fence for that fight. And I was in college at the time, and a lot of people, I was the boxing guy in my class and stuff, and a lot of people I knew like, what do you think? What do you think? Because they knew I was into boxing, and they would ask me for my opinion. And I was like, I don't know. Like, either man could win. I'm not making a prediction. No, what? Do you even follow boxing? And bear in mind, these are casuals, like the most casual NPC normie casuals in boxing you can get. And I'm like, what? Joshua's a beast. He's going to knock this guy out. He's going to do this. He's going to do that. I'm like, don't be so sure. Like, boxing doesn't work like that. But yeah, that was like the beginning, 2015, when Joshua was on the rise, and his name was starting to get a lot of traction, and the girls loved him, and then the guys loved him, which is a bit sus, but hey, he had that appeal, I suppose. Do I think Michael Hunter would be a good opponent if they chose him? Yeah, I think that would be a more than acceptable opponent. Very dangerous though. Although if it was Michael Hunter of, I don't know, 2018, that same Michael Hunter, but today, I'd say, yeah, he beats AJ probably. But Michael Hunter's looked a bit flat in his past few performances, and he's been fighting in that weird, that where they have like 4 fights a night or something like that. I can't remember what it's called, but some kind of mini tournament, I suppose. But a good opponent. Michael Hunter is good solid opponent. Probably can offer more than Whyte can at this stage, but if you're looking forward to the Wilder fight, would he prepare Joshua that well? Because even though Whyte wouldn't prepare Joshua all that well for Wilder, there's potential that someone else steps in, like Hrgovic, like Washington maybe, who at least has similar dimensions to Wilder. London Shaft says, I wish Zhang was a few years younger and had a better gas tank. He would have been a force, at very least better than... Yeah, probably. But I think Zhang, he's still got some life in him. I like Zhang. He's... I actually find him to be quite charismatic. For a guy who barely speaks English, he's got a pretty entertaining character. But I still think he's got some good wins left in him, or at least good fights. Because... yeah, he's up there in age, but he seems to be well preserved. And yeah, his stamina is terrible, but I don't know. That's not necessarily, it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be curtains for him. Andrew says, we need Outmatch to set up his own testing facility. VADA and UCAD suck. Yeah, as I say, I know virtually nothing about drug testing. All I know is from a nutritional perspective. Like, if you're a nutritionist, the kind of things you have to look out for, because of course a nutritionist um, is there's a lot of qualifications you need to take on, like a kind of continued professional development, because obviously doping and that kind of stuff is so prevalent in sport, but also like the consequences are immense and massive. So um, yeah, I'm not going to go. I'll stick to S&C, but I don't know. See what the future holds. Yeah, Andrew says lightweight, baby. Yes, sir. You mean ever take part in fight? Maybe, maybe. If you showed me the right amount of zeros on the check, sure. Um, I stay ready. That's what I say. Uh, JD says if KSI pulls it off against Tommy Fury, Jesus Christ, yeah, he probably won't. KSI can scrap, but I wouldn't be betting on him. JD asks if I ever uh, do the Mary Jane. No, I don't. Um, I am actually completely teetotal. I don't ingest any toxicants. I don't drink alcohol. I don't smoke cigarettes. I don't smoke the reefer. None of it. None at all. Very much walk a straight line. And I actually have some quite conservative views on things like that. So, yeah, I'm on the opposite end of the spectrum, I guess you could say. AJ is very hard to read. I believe you know your psychology. So, can you? I wouldn't say AJ's hard to read. I'd say AJ's conflicted. And bear in mind, I'm not a psychologist. I have like a bit of an interest in psychology, but it's never been um, uh, my main thing. But it's just something I sometimes explore when I feel it's pertinent. But AJ strikes me as someone who, and he always seems to be the kind of the subject of these psychological analyses, but he strikes me as someone who's conflicted, someone who isn't entirely sure of who he is as a person. You can see this in a lot of his actions where he wants to be kind of badman AJ from Watford, but at the same time he's MBE, and he also wants to be the squeaky clean sportsman, but he also wants to be, the knockout artist, old school fighter who doesn't give a what, and he just wants to get in there and do damage. It's like, who are you really? And I feel like he always has that conflict on his mind. He's always asking, he's always trying to figure out who he is. And that's kind of can be kind of debilitating, because these are the kind of struggles you have as a teenager, where you're forming your identity, where you're finding out what kind of person am I, what kind of person am I going to be in the future. But AJ's what, in his early 30s now, and he's in a sport where you need to back yourself like right to the end. But it can probably be quite difficult to back yourself when you're not entirely sure who you are, if that makes sense. I know this sounds a little bit abstract, but that's what I get. I think AJ isn't really that hard to read, but if there is any ambiguity, it's because he's not really sure who he is as a person. Just my perception. I'm not a psychologist, I'm not a therapist or anything like that. Just the impression I get. I don't think perception will matter quite so much to a 38-year-old man with poor fundamentals and 90 seconds of boxing since 2020. Yeah, like I hear you. That makes sense. But ultimately, like in a fight like Joshua versus Wilder, like Wilder's not someone who trades off his fundamentals anyway. He's someone who has a big punch and really has gotten to where he is now and enjoyed the successes, albeit them fairly limited, relatively speaking. He's got there because he's someone who's willing to get stuck in, and he has a big punch that allows him to probably get away with it. So I feel like perception and psychology matters more to someone like Wilder. See what I mean? If Wilder was down and out and he had no confidence, it really hit him hard. probably more so than any other fighter or the average fighter. Whereas he has that perception now, or he's regaining that perception, that self-perception that he's still a monster and a destructive force. And so if he goes against AJ and he holds that belief, whereas AJ, a bit shaky, had a 12-round decision over Franklin, but I didn't look good. Ooh, that's like a recipe for disaster, I think. So yeah, it's not much, but once again, the perception can really galvanize someone like Wilder, who is an extreme character. James Locke says boxing's on its backside. It's embarrassing. Ebbs and flows. I wouldn't say boxing is on its backside. I'd say it's, you got to take the rough with the smooth. As I say, last week we were singing boxing's praises. Oh, great fights. Inoue versus Fulton, great result. Spence versus Crawford, great result. But boxing in the UK could be better. Could be better, definitely. Boxing could be better as a whole, but especially in the UK. Excuse me. Some people think Tank's next fight would be Isaac Cruz in December. I probably agree. I just can't see Shakur being next, and Haney will surely not go back down to 135. Yeah, Haney's obviously lobbying for that Prograis fight. Shakur called out Lomachenko from what I saw most recently. To be honest, Cruz versus Tank, I wouldn't grumble. I would prefer to see someone else, but if it got made, I wouldn't be like, oh, I'd say interesting enough, although I'd expect Tank to win again. Following up from that, Haney needs to do the morally right thing and vacate his belts at 135. Morally right thing? I think it always comes down to the kind of turnaround. How long does he plan to stay at 135? But when it comes to fighters fighting in different weight classes and whether they hold on to their belts, it's always different for every fighter. It's never consistent. Nothing in boxing is consistent because a lot of times it comes down to who's making money. James says Haney is going to move up. They like keeping titles as long as possible. Sounds better when they make a fight. Yeah. It's like, did you hear about, was it the WBO announced that as soon as Jamel Charlo has been announced for the Canelo fight, stripped. You're not champion anymore. So what's the point? What is the point? Like, leave it to the last minute to strip him. And then on the other, like his twin brother, WBC champion, hasn't fought for 2 years. Just the inconsistency is mind-boggling sometimes. G-Man, can't remember. Nothing comes to mind regarding Chisora and PED controversies. Nothing comes to my mind either. Mr. Bipolar says, if he did it, never helped him. Oh, you talking about Chisora? Kind of lost track. Amir J Gaming, or Amari, don't know how to pronounce that. I feel that Whyte wasn't a risk. This would have been swept under. Excuse me. I feel that if Whyte wasn't a risk, this would have been swept under the rug. My dad seems to think AJ is like Frank Bruno now and will get cracked by a C-level fight soon. Those Frank Bruno comparisons have been around since 2013 when AJ first turned pro. Maybe he does get cracked by a C-level fighter. I personally wouldn't bank on it, but hey, watch this space. Find out. How does Usyk versus Dubois go? I'd be surprised if Usyk doesn't get a KO. Yeah, I don't think Usyk getting the stoppage is all that unrealistic. I'm not sure about Dubois' heart. What if he gets caught with a couple lefts on that eye and maybe some right hooks upside the head? And yeah, even though Usyk isn't a big puncher, he's accurate, he's consistent, and Dubois is a bit of a strange one mentally. So if Usyk stopped Dubois, I wouldn't be surprised. Um, like if he sparked Dubois out, like completely ironed him out, that would be strange. But if he would just wore Dubois down and maybe got him like dog tired to where he's drowning, and then he just takes him out late in the fight, like peppers him. Yeah, I'd be like, you know what? Doesn't surprise me all that much. JD says, I don't get how anyone complained about AJ White when it seems AJ versus White when it seems 99.9% likely we're getting AJ versus Wilder in January. 99.9%, is that, as far as I know, they are just rumors. Now they're rumors with a little bit of substance to them, but in boxing, it's at this time in boxing, it's difficult to like really get your hopes up. So it's yeah, it's difficult being a boxing fan. It's sometimes you just have to really wait and see, and only get excited when both guys are in the ring and they're about to square off. Then um, Beast LFC, when you think we get the Beterbiev Bivol fight? I have no idea, and that is a real slap in the face to the fighters and the boxing fans. What the WBC are doing, bunch of idiots, absolute idiots. AJ is nothing like Bruno. Yeah, exactly. Right, nothing like Bruno. If anything, Dubois is more like Bruno than AJ is. JD asks, "Why I'd ever do a face reveal?" I did a couple videos like when my channel had like 30 subs 2 years ago or 2.5 years ago. Um, and I just didn't see the point. Like the channel's not really about me; it's about stuff I talk about. So I don't really see the point in revealing my face. On top of that, I do like my privacy, and I work I work in a space, in an environment where a lot of like decent level pro fighters come through. And so if they're like seeing me in person and then seeing me on camera, I don't know, it makes things a bit awkward sometimes. Not that I'm working with them, but I'm around them when they're working in the lead up to fights and stuff. So I just think it's simpler to go about. But I appreciate that you desperately want to see my amazing looks. No, no, James. I'm not an ex-pro. I guess you could say an ex-amateur, although I did nothing in the amateurs. I not out of choice. I wanted to go all the way. Like if you would have asked me 10 years ago what I wanted to do as a career, I'd say boxing, and I was 100% certain. Like I was dead serious when I said boxing is my life. I'm going to be a professional fighter. I'm going to make a living out of boxing. I would look you dead in the eye and I'd say that. But life happens. We grow up. We let go of childhood dreams and stuff. So I ended up still trying to pursue boxing. As I say, not doing anything. Got into a rut of moving down to different gyms, being a sparring partner, essentially, almost like a gym fighter. Good enough to spar the top guys at clubs, but never getting the opportunities myself. Getting fed up, and then just gave up in 2017. But in the meantime, I'd started coaching, and yeah, made a career out of that instead. So I've coached, been a dedicated coach for 6 years. Yeah, for 6 years now. Coached a whole bunch of different people, different ability levels, mostly focusing on community boxing. So not really working with kids who want to be competitive, just because, and a lot of people don't realize this, in amateur boxing, there isn't much money in coaching. Like you'd be hard pressed to find an amateur coach who gets paid. A lot of the time they're volunteering. And I think that's very noble, but I can't afford to do things for free. So I focus on a different sector, if you will. But that being said, I've helped to coach some decent level amateurs. usually in a kind of consultancy capacity, whereby I'm not their dedicated coach, but I will um, review their training, I will review their sparring and their fights, and help them out any way I can, just because I enjoy it first and foremost. And if there's someone who I'm friends with or anything like that, I'll give them my 2 cents, and hopefully they get some use out of it through the channel as well. Because I've had this channel for like 2 years and 4 months, so around 2.5 years. I've had some guys reach out to me and ask for some training, both in person and online. Um, and yeah, it's just fun. So ultimately, I'm just someone sharing my knowledge and experience from boxing. It's been about 11 and a half years, and you can probably tell by my voice that I'm not particularly old. So I did dedicate a large portion of my life to boxing, um, for whatever that's worth. So yeah, hope that answers your question. James also asks, I think, well, he doesn't ask, he states, I think Hunter's great, but he ain't ready. Yeah, probably not. Mr. Bipolar says, AJ of old was exciting to watch. Since Andy Ruiz, he's not been the same fighter. Yeah, yeah, definitely. The excitement has definitely left. The events are still kind of exciting, like the Usyk fights. There was a bit of excitement around them. Even the Ruiz rematch, where it was like real high pressure. How is AJ going to deal with this? Exciting stuff in terms of the build up and the questions and the intrigue. But yeah, a lot of the entertainment value in AJ's actual fighting has left the chat. Reese says, big risk for Joshua fighting Wilder, could be career defining loss. Yeah, he could. Because if he goes in against Wilder and loses, he's lost to Usyk comprehensively twice. He's lost to Wilder probably comprehensively. It really cements, okay, Joshua once a champion and a decent champion, but not as good as these other champions. Puts it into perspective. JD, thoughts on Ty and Booth? I don't really have that much to say. I used to watch his videos years ago when he wasn't so, when his jokes and his tropes weren't so tired. They used to be like a bit edgy and kind of entertaining and stuff. But it's just too weird like these days. Or I haven't tuned into one of his videos for like 2 years maybe. But it just got too weird. And the repetition in his videos was driving me insane. And I just unsubbed, and I was just like, this is not my sense of humor anymore. Uh, there's nothing. This is nothing short of a disaster. Tickets are sold out. Pay-per-views are pretty much sold in the tons. Cinemas got locked into. Yeah, how do they save it? They can save it by getting Filip Hrgović, I reckon. And I know he's not the biggest casual name, but I think what people will do is they'll do a quick Google search, see his record, see who's fought, maybe a couple higher up rule knockouts, and that probably saved the show. But are they going to do that? Not sure. Not sure. Eddie will have a fighter on that card already lined up to fight AJ in case of an injury. Well, usually I feel like whenever they have done that, they've announced it before just in case. So I'm not entirely sure. And because this isn't a title fight or anything, it's just a rehab fight between contenders. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see what happens. Ruiz or Valine saves the show. I'm not sure about that. I'm not sure about it. It would save something. I'm not sure if it'd save the whole show though. Yimmy says, remember the last time AJ had a last minute replacement that didn't end well? How will refunds for pay-per-views and tickets work? And will cinemas pull off AJ's fight? I don't know. I don't know, but yeah, AJ hasn't got the best track record, because even before the Ruiz fight, if you looked at the Takam fight, oh, that was grueling for him. Got headbutt in the nose, looked dog tired after a few rounds. Hasn't had the best of luck. Yimmy asks, which city or region from the UK am I from? I'm from Birmingham, believe it or not. No, I'm from London. Can't you tell? Can't you tell? Um, hey, where's this come from? Don't be ashamed to be a Tory. Hey, no need to start that. Um, I'm actually apolitical. I don't sit on the. I don't get involved in politics. Also, was it 20? Yeah, it's about 27 quid. I think 26.99. Uh, yeah, and look, pay per view's pay per view. Prices go up. You don't have to pay. Allthebestfights.com next day. If you know, you know. Um, I think Wilder's confidence is in the bin though. He got stopped badly twice, and he has avoided the ring. Like, I don't know. Like with Wilder's simple, so he sees things differently, and he's a bit delusional. I don't. What and the thing is as well. Yeah, Wilder absolutely took an absolute shellacking in the Fury second fight, especially, but also the third fight. But Wilder just has like his heart isn't human, if that makes sense. He's just made of something else. Doesn't mean he's the best, but his mind just works a bit differently, I think. Wilder's not a rational person. He has like just he's so deluded, but it's like a protective barrier, if that makes sense. JD says, yeah, these big fights in boxing aren't delivering enough. Tank versus Garcia wasn't that competitive. Ryan quit. Yeah, I mean, hindsight's 2020, but it was a high stakes fight. There was pressure on them. Inoue versus Fulton and Spence versus Crawford were ridiculous beatdowns, especially Spence's. Yeah, but you don't know until after the fights happened. Like if there's a lot of hype for a fight and it turns out to be one sided, like Spence Crawford was, it's just what happens. And if anything, it's comprehensive because it shows without question this guy's the best. Let's move on. That's the one thing that really does boxing a disservice and does fans a disservice is when there are these long drawn out sagas of who's best, who like when you're having rematches and trilogies and quadrilogies. That's what I hate, and I think most people agree with that. But when big fight, okay, you reach a fever pitch, boom, there's your winner. Let's move on. That's what people like. The instantaneousness of it. The not spontaneity, but comprehension. There we go. Beterbiev versus Smith. Oh yeah, I was disappointed when that got postponed because call me crazy, but I think Smith has a decent chance of beating Beterbiev. You know, Smith, I don't rate him too highly, but Beterbiev's getting on a bit. The wear and tear is adding up, and Smith doesn't look too bad at light heavy. Hasn't fought any great opponents, but I think he's got more than enough firepower. Excuse me, more than enough firepower to beat Beterbiev. Dr. Repar, I wouldn't be at all surprised if Usyk stops Dubois, death by 1,000 cuts. Yeah, exactly. There's no punch from a 220-pound man that doesn't hurt. And after 500 or 600, yeah, exactly. I see how Usyk can win and win by stoppage. And, if he can land consistent, if Usyk lands as consistently on Dubois as he did on AJ, I think we might see Dubois get taken out. Just my opinion, though. JD says, "Sweet, I'm 18, so it wouldn't be super duper late to start boxing. So I'll recruit you as a coach. Move down to London. Hey, look, you know where I am. But on a serious note, if you haven't started boxing already and you're interested, JD, 18 is nothing. Like I'm not even that far ahead of you, and I'm like still got plenty of energy, plenty of life left to do things. So take it from me, and I'm sure a lot of the guys in the chat, they'll back me up and they'll G you up as well. 18, if you want to do boxing, you want to pursue it, do it. Do it and don't even think twice. Like life's too short. Do what you want to do. Because yeah, people talk about the get started early and you get better. But but boxing in general, what I was taught is the earlier you start, the earlier you finish. And therefore, it doesn't really necessarily matter how early you start. It's more about what kind of start you have. If you take up boxing and you prioritize your development, you don't get caught up in any macho stuff. Yeah, you look to challenge yourself and uh, test your limits when need be, but you prioritize your development and getting better every day and not trying to compete with anyone. That's your road to success. Find yourself a good coach who's not just trying to um, live vicariously through you, because there are a lot of coaches that do that. There are a lot of coaches, say in my position, where they didn't achieve anything themselves, but they have a bit of authority as a coach and like, you know what, I'm going to try and live through this guy. I want to make a name for myself as a coach, and I'm just going to use these young guys um, to do that. Steer clear of those guys. I was very fortunate, and as I say, take it with a pinch of salt, because I I don't have any credentials in boxing. Although I think some of the guys here in the chat now who have watched my stuff, they know that I know boxing. I know what I'm talking about from a practical sense. Um, uh, Damn it. But yeah, anyway, I was lucky. I had a coach who prioritized me as a person, not even me as a boxer, but me as a person. My boxing coach was really like a guardian in many senses, where he taught me about life. He taught me obviously a hell of a lot about boxing, was very open-minded, and always always said to me, have a backup plan, because you never know what kind of curveballs life will throw you. And that's what I did, because it got to a point where I was suffering with injuries. I was really being taken advantage of whenever I went to different gyms and different clubs. And it got to a point where I'd reached my limit. I was like, I'm not going to do boxing anymore. But I had something I could look back on. I had a plan B, I had a plan C, because now I've been out of boxing for 6 years. I called it a day. I was like, you know what? No, I'm not doing this anymore. I'm going to focus on another career. And you know, not to toot my own horn, but I've enjoyed some success as a boxing coach alone. Having that knowledge, but also having, uh, I guess, connections. I've been able to actually get paid to be a boxing coach for the past 6 years. That means something. Obviously, I've just had my degree, enjoyed a lot of success at university academically, so I have like options that I could explore. However, I also bear in mind that there are a lot of guys in my position, young guys, don't have options, and boxing really is their only avenue, their only means of making something of their life. So I don't know what your situation is, JD, but if you want to pursue it, go for it. And myself, and I'm sure the other guys, will help you out as best we can, if that's what you want. But 18, hey man, sky's the limit. Just believe in yourself. Like, that's really all it takes. As cliche as it sounds, if you have the will, the intention, and you have even a rough dream, a rough goal that you want to achieve, you're set. That's all, really. So, power to you. Um, all right. Clicked on the wrong one. Do I listen to Highfield Boxing? No, I've never actually heard of them. You say best boxing podcast out there. Yeah, never actually heard of them though. Hergovich would beat AJ, I think. Yeah, maybe, maybe. Um, Only one way to find out. uh, Lexius Lutherid said, "Who's that Jew?" Said, "I'm guessing the thumbnail. That is Ronnie Coleman with Dillian Whyte's face." Wilder's very simple. He is indeed. Um, Wilder is like a guy who will only accept. Yeah, yeah, he is. Like his ego is just unmatched. He will only accept that. But give him credit, he's a hell of a fighter. You get that guy in the ring and he's dangerous. Jake Paul versus Nate Diaz. How does it go? I have no clue. Jake Paul, I've seen fight a handful of times. Nate Diaz, I think I've seen him fight once in the octagon, and even then, it was probably just highlights. I'd just say Jake Paul, maybe. I don't know. That is an actual guess, 100%. Probably Jake Paul. JD05. I wonder why Wilder is such a controversial character. If you've ever seen his pops, he comes across really. Wilder's just a bit crazy. Like, he's got a bit of a screw loose. He's one of these guys who is like, it's just not all there. He's a bit simple, a bit deluded, a bit crazy, says bizarre things. Some people, they're just wired differently, and Wilder's one of them. El Kitten 04, nice thumbnail, thank you, and a nice display picture. Did I go to private school? No, absolutely not. Funny story. So in London you have boroughs. I can't remember how many boroughs there are in London. Some boroughs obviously better than others. The borough that my school is in is, I think, one of the worst in London. At least when I was in school, it wasn't a good borough at all. And my school within that borough was the worst. So I probably went to one of the worst schools in London, potentially. I think in that borough, there was only one school that was like recognized as being worse than mine. So yeah, far from being at a private school, trust me. Even though I know the way I speak is kind of leads people to believe otherwise. But no. El Kitten, I think Smith would go the distance with Beterbiev, but wouldn't beat him. Maybe. I don't know. That fight hadn't analysed it too much. And it's a shame that it's not going ahead, or at least it's been postponed. I'm not sure what's the next move for that one. I think NBA players have the biggest shot crossing over to boxing because of their sheer size and potential punching power. Agree? No. I work with a lot of basketball players, and obviously they're not NBA level players, but in terms of what we'll say is in terms of the energy system profile, like in the work to rest ratios, it's quite similar, because with basketball, like boxing, you need to have quite a balanced athletic profile where you need to have like a good aerobic base and endurance, but also need to have some explosive, powerful qualities, but also be able to perform those numerous times throughout the course of a game or a match. But basketball players, it really depends, take on a case-by-case basis. But I don't know, basketball, the movement patterns are very different. Obviously, there's a lot of jumping, running, sprinting. It's just, I wouldn't have much confidence in an NBA player crossing over to boxing. And especially because the realm of combat sports is just so different to other sports that it's a tough ask for any athlete, I think, to make that transition to combat sports. And see, the thing is about basketball players as well is they're quite explosive. Like, they can jump high. I don't think they're necessarily the best sprinters, but they jump quite high. So I guess you could say they're powerful in that regard. But a lot of the time it's because they're not particularly big in terms of mass. In terms of height, they are, but mass, they're typically quite light relative to their height. So I guess that kind of helps them to jump and move the way they do. But then you could say, okay, maybe that would help them in the boxing ring. I don't know, but it's a difficult question to answer. I'm based in Nottingham, and the boxing clubs over here ain't the best. Hey, look, you're from Nottingham, like the sheriff himself, Carl Froch. Surely there's a boxing club out there that can help you. Probably would have to move down to Birmingham or something if I want to pursue a career in professional boxing. Well, look, don't make the mistake of holding out for the best boxing club or the best coach. At your stage, if you're an amateur starting out, your best bet is to just get started. Don't fall into the trap of best or optimal. Get started, get your feet wet, get introduced. And then when you have an idea of what's good advice, what's not so good advice, you can start to source your own learning from there. Like, not far from me is one of the most iconic boxing clubs in London and probably the Southeast as well. Like, it's a very famous boxing club, very highly touted. But these days, anyway, they don't really produce much of their own talent. A lot of the time, they get fighters, they get boxers from even like way up in the Midlands, come down to their gym, wear their vest at tournaments, and that's it. Oh, do a bit of sparring too. But this club hasn't really reared its own talent. It's just taken on talent because people want to fight with that particular vest on. So just if you focus on yourself and you're willing to learn from loads of different sources and you take everything on board, keep what's useful, discard what's not, add what's your own, as Bruce Lee said, that's going to put you in better stead. Don't wait for the perfect boxing club, for the perfect coach, because it's not going to happen. You just got to get in there, get started, go from there. And Dr. Repper says AJ didn't start until he was 18. Yeah, exactly. Anthony Yard didn't start until he was around that age as well. And look at what they've both done. You got plenty left in the tank. If you start now, you could be a world champion in 10 years, or probably not. But yeah, exactly. You got F around and find out. That's our advice to you. Mike says, outmatch, even sir. Why would any reasonable fighter want to fight a UK fighter? Due to the eyeballs and close to Germany. I think it depends. I think it depends on who the fighter is. But I get where you're coming from, Mike. And it's good to have you here. I'm not sure how much longer we're going to go on for, so I don't know if you want to stay tuned for a bit and and join the chat in. I think I'm going to bring this one to a close shortly. Albert London, he likes the display picture. Yeah, took me all of about 5 minutes to make, but it seems to be quite a hit. James says, I'm 35, but 20-ish years ago, we all went up to a local boxing club and learnt the basics. And after 6 months, they all just went out fighting every weekend, thinking they were fighters. Dedication is key. Yeah, exactly. That's going to be the ultimate thing, is can you dedicate yourself? What you'll find as well, at least this is my experience, like, because boxing works in seasons, so there's usually no fights taking place at low level amateurs from, I want to say, June, July, August, and then the season will start up in September. At least that's how it was when I was, 10 years ago when I was boxing. And so if you started in the summer, say, okay, I'm going to start this new club in the summer, you'd usually come in and there'd be like a small group of you guys who were the same age and the same weight. And it was always going to be a test of, okay, who stays here the longest? And I remember I first moved to like my proper serious boxing club, and I was the only one who hung on. All the other, like, there were 5 of us, and the other 4 left after the first spar. And you kind of, okay, you're the one, you stay here. But then you spar someone else, you just get absolutely demolished. But yeah, can you dedicate yourself to it? Okay, so you know London pretty well. Grew up there till I was 3. I visit my dad's side 3 times a year in Leighton. All right, yeah, Leighton. I guess you know about Waltham Forest then. It's not the nicest borough, at least not in years gone by. Dr. Repper, AJ being 6'6" heavyweight has certainly made it a bit easier for him to get. Whereas yeah, look, JD, I was about that size when I was, I don't know, 18. Don't worry about that. Like Anthony Yard, I know it's easy to look at the 2 Anthonys, Joshua and Yard, and think, oh, they're genetic freaks, but they're guys who dedicated themselves to boxing first and foremost. Like, JD, don't overthink it. If you want to do it, do it. Don't talk yourself out of it. Don't get me wrong, it's scary. Boxing is a terrifying sport. Like, you're going to be on edge probably in the gym every time, but that's what's going to push you, because you're going to be like, I can't get punked. So at bare minimum, I'm going to be ready. So, but do it if you enjoy it, first and foremost. Rugby is probably the closest non-fighting sport in terms of fitness and capacity to absorb physical punishment, intimidation. Still very different. Yeah, exactly. It's close, but it's still massively different. James says Dale Youth. Is that where you went? Dale Youth. That's James DeGale and George Groves' gym, if I remember correctly. And Annoying Boxing says nobody cares about Anthony Yard. Oh, poor Anthony. A lot of rugby players would smash a boxer up. On a rugby pitch, maybe, but in a boxing ring, I'm not too sure. I think I can tell what your favourite sport is. All right. Anyway, chaps, we are down to 20 people in the chat. I appreciate you all for tuning in. Gone for a long one. It's been a busy one. Time has flown by. But you can probably tell my... in a pub, Annoying Boxing says. Yeah, sounds about right. My voice has taken a hammering. It's 8:15 and I'm getting rather hungry. So I'm going to call it time here. As I say, I appreciate all of you guys for tuning in. I greatly appreciate it. And I hope you guys have enjoyed it as well. So yeah, I'm going to leave this one here. I guess I'll catch you whenever we get some news regarding next week's potential fight night. I'll keep you updated as best I can. But for now, people, thanks again. Have a good evening. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. And I'll catch you on the next one. Cheers as always.